So I was just talking about before we got interrupted with technical difficulties that we want to use our this world of ethical conduct not just as a way of compassionately responding to suffering and the causes of suffering in our relationships and in our wider world, but also as a powerful way to purify our own heart and to, in a more concrete way, begin to uproot the tendencies towards greed, anger, and delusion. And this is such a powerful place where we realize that um, the purification of our view, the development of wisdom, really depends on this messy work of operationalizing the view that it matters, that there are skillful and unskillful qualities of mind. And this is exactly this sticky, messy, complicated place of relationship is exactly the place to begin to do the work of uprooting the wrong view, the self-centered view that acts out greed, acts out hate and aversion and fear. So how do we operationalize? And the Buddha in the path and the talks he gave about the Noble Eightfold Path, we're bringing this moral sensitivity. We're bringing this moral sensitivity to this place of relationship in terms of speech, right? It's such a potent place of leaving impressions in the heart. I mean, think about it, in terms of the impressions left in our heart. I bet everybody can remember a time, maybe even 20, 30, 40 years ago, when some words were spoken to us and it still has some impact. We still feel the impression that has been left in our heart. So these places are impactful. The place of speech, our actions in the world, and how we earn our living. This is how the Buddha invites us to illuminate this whole world of morality, of action, of interrelatedness. How am I using my speech? And this first way of operationalizing it is just this capacity to have breaks. So like when I'm about to speak something, if what I'm about to say is of concern, like if there's some heartstring that recognizes the motivation behind what I'm about to say as maybe being suspect, possibly not skillful, then the heart's going to start to sing, right? Like we did in our guided meditation tonight. We're learning to stay attuned to how the heart feels. What's the song? What's the feeling stream? We want to develop that sensitivity, that moral sensitivity, because the heart, what makes the heart sing is it has all of these, like this is just a simile, but it has all of these taut strings, these tight strings that have been developed from past experience, where we've caused ourselves and others harmed, or we've had some real success in navigating life with ease without causing harm. And so whenever this moment appears to our mind, to our heart, to be similar to something in the past, in a sense, those taut strings are there. And what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're sensing, it vibrates those strings like, honey, this reminds me of all those similar situations in the past. And if they were situations where we caused ourselves and others harm, there's going to be a yucky feeling there. And I appreciate Judith sent in an email asking about conscience, having this conscious speak to us, and that for some people, perhaps it goes right to guilt or self-hatred or shame. But that's really at the level of how the mind interprets the heart song, the heart feeling, right? Because it's just sort of a very simplistic system that when this moment is somehow familiar to the mind, to the heart, to other moments in the past, then a similar feeling that was left over from those previous moments is going to rise up in the heart. Oh, this is what the heart's singing right now. I should probably listen. What's the general nature of this song that the heart is singing? Oh, it sounds a lot like, honey, be careful. Really bring some sensitivity to this moment. It's both the breadth and the depth of awareness, because the heart senses that it's this kind of place in the past where you've acted or spoken or thought in ways that have left a really unpleasant taste. You're in that vicinity again, as much as the heart can tell. So this is the kind of information system of consciousness and intuition, right? It's not going to tell us what to do and not do. That comes later. That comes with the mind, the thinking mind, the rational mind, saying, sort of using that more blunt or simplistic emotional information that's coming forward. But we definitely want to rely on it. What's the heart feeling? Is it telling me, be careful, pay attention, listen, look deeply, pause? Or is it sensing, you're in safe territory, go for it, it's okay? And so we have that, and we also have the maps of our elders, like in this particular area of wise speech, which I'll cover tonight. And we can use it next week for our small group interactions. There's the map that the Buddha gives us is very specific, where we're highlighting these places we might want to restrain ourselves, to abstain, to pause, around any moment we might be putting a little spin, not 100% truthful, emphasizing this part, but leaving some information out. So, clearly an outright lie or falsehood, hopefully, there would be a moral impulse like, ooh, do I really want to lie? Do I feel good about lying here? Not telling the truth. But a lot of the times it isn't just a blatant falsehood. It's really more shading of the truth or leaving out some information so that it makes us look better or makes my opinion look right. And that's why we have to have a real ear, a real sensitivity to the heart that will notice the quality of the motivation. It's not even so much like what we're saying and what information we may be leaving out, but it's really more the motivation to manipulate people by how we're speaking about something. This is what Bhikkhu Bodhi says. It's not Bhikkhu Bodhi, rather, he's quoting the Buddha here. And it's really, if you haven't picked up your copy of the Noble Eightfold Path, and remember, you can get this PDF version for free online at accesstoinsight.org. But just Google the Noble Eightfold Path by Bhikkhu Bodhi. 2 words. Bhikkhu just means Buddhist monk, and Bodhi is his name, Bodhi. And you'll find the PDF copy. And there's a chapter for each of the 8 limbs of the Eightfold Path. I'm now reading from the one on right speech, right action, right livelihood, the chapter on sila, or ethical conduct. And the part about abstaining from false speech, Bhikkhu Bodhi quotes the Buddha, "Herein, someone avoids false speech and abstains from it. One speaks the truth, is devoted to truth, reliable, worthy of confidence, not a deceiver of people. Being at a meeting or amongst people, or in the midst of their relatives, or in society, or in the king's court, and called upon, asked as a witness to tell what one knows, one answers, if one knows nothing, I know nothing. And if one knows, one answers, I know. And if one has seen nothing, one answers, I have seen nothing. And if one has seen, one answers, I have seen. Thus one never knowingly speaks a lie, either for the sake of their own advantage, or the sake of another person's advantage, or for the sake of any advantage whatsoever." This is a really high bar, and Bhikkhu Bodhi goes on in the next few pages, and he talks about just this importance of commitment to truth speaking, truth saying, and how it really aligns with the underlying sort of really the essence of the whole path, right? Because the Buddha's analysis of human suffering is our way of understanding and perceiving is really based on superficiality, distractedness, denial, not seeing clearly. And what comes from that is suffering. So the correction is this deepening commitment, this alignment with the way it is. So in the deepest sense of our practice, it's about aligning with the truth of the way that it is. You can use that. Like anybody asks you, what's all the stuff you're doing with the Buddhist teachings? And you can just say, makes a lot of sense to me to want to align my life with the truth of the way it is. To live my life with intimacy so I can align with the way that it is. So my actions, my words, even my thought and understanding really is arising out of that integrity of being in alignment with the way it is. So that's why speech is so much about this commitment to not speaking mistruths. And we see it's just so apparent to me, I'm guessing to all of us, just how much of the human suffering in the world is somehow tied up with falsehoods being spoken, and how it perpetuates. It's like for the evil, for the injustice and oppressive systems, they're all reinforced and held together by lies. And sometimes the lies are the lies of omission, not speaking the truth, not including the truth. And sometimes it's just like turning truth on its head and basically saying things that are just not true. I mean, it's just being played out in living color in politics these days, and has been probably from the very beginning. So if we're interested in walking this path, cultivating the stability of present moment awareness, learning how to be present, open, intimate, so that our life can align with the way that it is, it just doesn't make sense to be uncareful about how we speak and sloppy about truth and willing to shade or use some information but not speak the whole truth or tell white lies. Even, in the Buddhist tradition, it's kind of a high bar, but even in jest, telling lies, which I catch myself doing with some frequency, just as a joke kind of, where you're being sarcastic or, just being silly and saying something that's not true, but in a way that, to be light or funny. But it is a bit of an affront. I've been cultivating a sensitivity, not telling myself I shouldn't do it, but really trying to feel what it feels like when I do that. And I notice it's much more calming to always align with the truth, speak the truth, have my words kind of flow from the way that it is, as opposed to even being in playful ways, misspeaking. And it's very interesting in the tradition that the Buddha said that, in the tradition, it's said that the Buddha, in all the many lifetimes, and I don't know if you know this about the tradition, it's like the mythology or legends. I wouldn't I wouldn't hold it as literal truth, but really, who knows? But it's just a very powerful myth or story about the many, many lifetimes of the Buddha. So the myth goes that way, 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 way back, when there was a person named Sumedo, who was the Buddha to be, right? So previous lifetimes, incalculable number of previous lifetimes, Sumedo made the resolve to want to be a Buddha, to be fully awake and to be able to teach in a way that benefited many, many people. So he made this resolve, and then he had basically an infinite number of lifetimes developing the heart qualities that would allow him to be a Buddha before he was born in the lifetime that we know as the historic Buddha. And it's said that he made lots of mistakes in all those years, including, killing people and really bad moral things. But once he made that resolve, he never uh, broke the intention to speak the truth. So that's kind of interesting, that because part of that intention to be a Buddha is to align with the truth of things and not to intentionally speak a lie, is sort of right hand in hand with the whole path. So this is a really good homework for us this week about developing that conscience, that voice of intuition. Whenever, it's fine if it's a little late, but it'd be better if it's even before we speak. But wherever it is, before we speak, while we're speaking, or 2 days later, it doesn't matter what matters, but we just want to start noticing the heart's response to speaking a falsehood, spinning the truth, shading the truth in one way or another. And how does the heart respond? Because more than anything, we want a heart that recognizes, like when we're doing something unskillful, when we're planting seeds of suffering, we want our sensitive heart, to know that. Even if it's late, better late than never. Like we're going to bed, and then we remember something we said 8 hours earlier in the middle of the day. Oh, I said that? That wasn't really true. Or the motivation of that wasn't so good. Because it's not just not speaking falsehoods, but the Buddha goes on, abstaining from slanderous speech, where we're using speech as a weapon. Here the Buddha says, one avoids slanderous speech and abstains from it. What one has heard here, one does not repeat there, so as to cause dissension there. And what one has heard there, one does not repeat here, so as to cause dissension here. Thus one unites those who are divided, and those that are united one encourages. Concord gladdens one. One delights and rejoices in concord, and it is concord that one spreads by one's words. Right? So words can be used for a lot of healing and resolution and harmony, and words can be real weapons and cause harm. And I bet, another thing you can share and reflect on, like those times when we used words as a weapon, we actually definitely, without a doubt, wanted to hurt somebody. And instead of hitting them, we thought, oh, I'll say this. This will cut deep. This will really hurt this person. And we went for it. And then how does that feel? Right? And this, people who are in intimate relationships have a long term partner or a deep friend or a sibling, something like one of those more complicated and intense and long term relationships. Sometimes, like even the people we love the most, we use our words as weapons. And a lot of it can be passive aggressive, where on the surface we can justify what we said, seemingly. But if we're more honest, more sensitive, we realize it was a gotcha. I wanted to hurt that person. It was a little stab, a little jab, a little like, you're no good, you're bad, like hurting them. And can we cultivate, especially this week and then in an ongoing way, that moral sensitivity so that we'll catch that before, during, or at least after? Like, again, when you're lying in bed at night. Or sometimes it isn't until your next Buddhist retreat where you've got a weekend or 9 days and you're cultivating a lot of sensitivity. And then something you said 3 months ago that was a little off, motivated by greed, motivated by hate, motivated by whatever that was not so skillful, rises up from your memory and you feel it. And there's that sort of moral feeling like, ah. Now, that can turn into self-hatred, like, oh, I can't believe it, I'm so bad. But we want to learn how to use that feeling of consciousness, having a moral conscience. Like, oh, I'm happy to know that that was unskillful. I'm happy. Like, I'd rather not have done that. But given that I said that, right, I'm happy that I now recognize that was unskillful. Because now it lives in my heart, my moral heart, as a kind of monument. Honey, don't do that again. And we want those monuments because that's going to make it more likely that we don't say something similar down the road. We're going to catch it more likely because of that monument in our heart. Oh, honey, don't go there. Don't do that. Don't say that. So around speaking a falsehood or using words as a weapon. And then there's two more parts to the map the Buddha gives us around speech. The next one is around harsh speech. And the Buddha says, one avoids harsh language. And I think about harsh speech as sort of using the power of words, just kind of, there's a whole mythology around warring gods. We see it sort of like in our present day world, it's like people who have a lot of power, like your typical greedy corporate type that we imagine, happy to step on toes, take advantage, to get their way. And it's this sort of blustering use of language where we use provocative language or we use a loud voice, or one way or another, we're kind of tripping on power. And it's coming out through how we use language, how we use words, the choices of words, the volume of words, the affect. And so the Buddha says, one avoids harsh language, abstains from it, one speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, such words as go to the heart, are courteous, friendly, agreeable to many. Doesn't mean that we're not capable of speaking truth to power. But the point of our words isn't to act out our need for power. The point of our words are to be effective. So we might, like some of you who are parents, like sometimes you got to raise your voice to get the attention of your children. Certainly did that when I was a school teacher, elementary school teacher. I really learned that. I thought like, initially I just got, not often, but I got angry, but I wasn't necessarily in control. But over a couple of years of being an elementary school teacher, I realize that sometimes I have to use the sort of loudness because I care and because something needs to be done in that moment. And then it was a little cleaner. And then the last thing, the most subtle part of wise speech and really understanding this, like operationalizing what is skillful in the direction of liberation in the messy area of speech is around idle speech. And the Buddha writes, or the Buddha spoke, one avoids idle chatter, abstains from it. One speaks at the right time in accordance with facts, speaks what is useful, speaks of the Dharma and of the discipline, speaks of the path. One's speech is like a treasure, uttered at the right moment, accompanied by reason, moderate and full of sense. Yeah, and this is like, is what I'm about to say an improvement on silence? That's a really good marker, helper. Does this really need to be said? Am I just filling up space, or am I uncomfortable with the silence? Well, maybe instead of filling the silence with a bunch of idle chatter, maybe I could learn to be comfortable with the silence, even if it's initially a little awkward. So I wanted to cover some of that. I know there's not too many people online right now, but we'll get this up for those and I'll send the link out so people can catch what we missed tonight. So it's nice to be with you all, and I'll leave it here, and I hope to see you all next Monday night.